everything shifted in an instant, or at least, that's how the story is being told across social media. One alleged moment, amplified through fragmented posts and unverified screenshots, was enough to set off a chain reaction of speculation that quickly moved far beyond its supposed origin. At the center of it all is 21 Savage, an artist known just as much for his music as for his carefully controlled public image. For years, he has maintained a level of privacy that sets him apart in modern hip-hop culture. While many artists build their brands on constant visibility, personal updates, and online engagement, 21 Savage has taken the opposite route. He rarely explains himself publicly, rarely reacts to rumors, and almost never allows personal matters to spill into interviews or social media discourse. That restraint has shaped his reputation. To his supporters, it reads as discipline and emotional control. To the internet, however, silence often becomes a blank canvas, one that others rush to fill with assumptions. According to unverified claims circulating online, that private boundary may have been disrupted by an alleged DNA test connected to a personal relationship. It's important to emphasize that nothing about this narrative has been officially confirmed. There are no verified documents, no public statements, and no credible evidence supporting the story currently spreading across platforms. What exists instead is a patchwork of screenshots, reposts, and interpretations, each one adding a new layer of uncertainty. At first, the conversation was quiet. A few posts appeared, mostly speculative in tone, followed by scattered comments in forums where celebrity rumors typically surface. There was no immediate indication that the situation would grow beyond standard online gossip, but as is often the case in digital spaces, repetition began to replace verification. The more the claim was shared, the more it started to feel established to casual observers, even without proof. Soon, screenshots began circulating more widely, some cropped, some blurry, none traceable to an original source. Despite their questionable authenticity, they were quickly treated by parts of the online audience as supporting evidence. Once that shift happens, narratives tend to take on a life of their own. People stop asking where information comes from and start focusing on what it might imply. As the discussion expanded, attention turned toward another public figure frequently associated with 21 Savage in online conversations: Latto. Fans and social media users began revisiting old interviews, shared appearances, and past social media interactions, attempting to retroactively construct meaning. Moments that once seemed casual or coincidental were reinterpreted as possible clues in a developing story. A compliment in an interview, a shared event, a vague lyric, everything started to get filtered through the lens of the rumor. But even as the theories multiplied, the foundation remained unchanged. There is no verified confirmation of any alleged DNA test, no official acknowledgement of conflict, and no substantiated evidence of the claims being discussed. The entire narrative exists in a gray zone built from speculation and fragmented interpretation. Still, the story continues to gain traction, largely because of the people involved. 21 Savage's public persona plays a major role in this. His calm, reserved nature and refusal to engage with online noise create a kind of vacuum whenever rumors appear. In the absence of clarification, the internet tends to fill that silence with its own explanations, often escalating speculation rather than resolving it. Meanwhile, online communities have taken the discussion further, building increasingly elaborate theories. Old interviews are being rewatched, lyrics are being dissected, and past public appearances are being analyzed frame by frame as if they contain hidden meaning. It's a familiar pattern in digital culture. Incomplete information evolves into narrative construction, where audiences try to assemble coherence out of fragments. Yet despite the intensity of the discussion, one reality remains unchanged. Everything being circulated is still unverified. There is no confirmed incident, no official statement, and no factual foundation supporting the claims currently trending online. What exists instead is a reflection of how modern narratives form: fast, emotional, and often detached from verification. And in this case, the combination of silence, fame, and speculation has turned uncertainty into a story that feels larger than the evidence behind it. For now, it remains exactly that: a story built on interpretation, not confirmation. As engagement increased, the story began to take on a life of its own. Different versions of events emerged, each shaped by interpretation rather than fact. Some users insisted the alleged DNA test was real, while others dismissed the entire narrative as fabrication. Many remained uncertain, occupying a middle ground where belief and skepticism coexisted. Meanwhile, both 21 Savage and Latto continued their professional activities without addressing the circulating claims. Public appearances, music releases, and scheduled engagements continued as usual. This lack of response further deepened speculation, as audiences attempted to interpret silence in the absence of official clarification. In digital environments, silence is rarely seen as neutral. It is often interpreted as meaningful, intentional, or strategic. As the narrative expanded, the alleged DNA test became the central focal point of discussion. According to online claims, the supposed test created emotional tension within a private relationship. However, there is no verified evidence that such a document exists. The idea itself spread primarily through reposts, speculation, and user-generated commentary rather than credible reporting or official sources. Despite this, the rumor gained enough traction to influence public perception. Online users began linking unrelated events, re-examining timelines, and assigning meaning to coincidences. This is a familiar pattern in viral controversy cycles, where fragmented information is assembled into a cohesive story, regardless of factual accuracy. Some unverified accounts also suggest that the situation led to a private confrontation. These claims describe an emotionally charged exchange in which questions were raised and tensions escalated quickly. However, these accounts vary significantly and lack any consistent, reliable foundation. No confirmed details exist regarding when, where, or whether such an interaction occurred. Still, the idea of a confrontation added another layer to the narrative. It shifted the discussion from passive rumor to active conflict, increasing emotional engagement among audiences. In online environments, conflict-driven narratives tend to spread more rapidly than neutral information because they evoke stronger reactions. As speculation intensified, users continued revisiting older content involving the individuals mentioned in the rumor. Interviews, social media posts, and public appearances were reanalyzed repeatedly. In many cases, ordinary interactions were reinterpreted as meaningful evidence, even though they had originally occurred without any known connection to the current narrative. This process highlights a broader feature of digital culture: the tendency to retroactively assign meaning to past events based on present speculation. Once a narrative begins to form, everything connected to it is often reinterpreted through that lens. At the same time, no official statements have been released to confirm or deny any of the circulating claims. This absence of verified information has created a vacuum that continues to be filled by speculation. Each new post, comment, or alleged screenshot adds another layer to the discussion, even if its authenticity is uncertain. Another aspect contributing to the spread of the narrative is the involvement of Latto within online discussions. Some users have attempted to connect her to the situation based on indirect associations, past interactions, or perceived coincidences. However, these connections remain speculative and unsupported by verified evidence. No official information confirms any involvement beyond online interpretation. As the conversation developed further, it became less about specific claims and more about broader themes: trust, perception, privacy, and the impact of public scrutiny on personal relationships. The narrative evolved into a case study of how quickly private matters, real or imagined, can become public discourse in the digital age. One of the most significant factors driving the story's persistence is uncertainty. Without verified facts, audiences are left to interpret incomplete information. In such environments, multiple versions of the truth can exist simultaneously, each supported by fragments of evidence that may or may not be accurate. Some users believe the story reflects real underlying tension. Others argue it is entirely speculative and amplified by social media dynamics. Many remain undecided, recognizing that there is not enough confirmed information to reach a conclusion. This ambiguity has allowed the narrative to remain active. Unlike traditional news cycles that resolve when facts are confirmed, digital speculation often continues indefinitely. New interpretations emerge as old ones fade, ensuring that the conversation remains ongoing. At its core, this situation reflects how modern narratives form in the age of social media. A single unverified claim can evolve into a widespread discussion, especially when it involves public figures with established fan bases. As engagement grows, the line between observation and interpretation becomes increasingly blurred. The story surrounding 21 Savage, the alleged DNA test, and the rumored involvement of Latto exists entire. Lie within this blurred space. It is a combination of speculation, fragmented claims, and online interpretation, with no confirmed foundation in verified fact. Yet despite the lack of confirmation, the narrative continues to circulate. It is discussed, debated, and reinterpreted across platforms, each version slightly different from the last. In the absence of clarity, imagination fills the gaps, and those gaps expand with every retelling. Ultimately, what is unfolding is not just a rumor about personal relationships. It is an example of how information behaves in the digital era, how quickly it spreads, how easily it transforms, and how difficult it becomes to separate fact from interpretation once a story gains momentum. Until verified information emerges, the situation remains unresolved. The claims, the alleged connections, and the interpretations all exist in a space between possibility and confirmation. And in that space, the story continues to grow, shaped not by facts, but by perception, curiosity, and the constant search for meaning in incomplete information. Everything, according to online accounts, shifted in an instant. Or at least, that is how the narrative is being constructed across social media platforms. A single moment, described by some as sudden, others as inevitable, has been framed as the spark that allegedly triggered a chain reaction involving emotions, reputations, and relationships that were previously believed to be stable. At the center of this unfolding story is 21 Savage, an artist widely recognized not only for his music, but also for his carefully maintained public silence and controlled personal image. For years, he has built a reputation rooted in restraint. Unlike many public figures who actively share their private lives, 21 Savage has often chosen privacy, limiting public exposure of his relationships and emotional world. That discretion has contributed to his mystique. Fans know him as someone deliberate, measured, and difficult to read. But in narratives like this, silence becomes a double-edged sword. It protects, but it also fuels speculation when gaps in information appear. And now, according to unverified rumors circulating online, that silence has been replaced by noise. The alleged catalyst is a claim involving a leaked DNA test tied to his personal life. There has been no official confirmation, no verified documents, and no credible public statement supporting these claims. Yet despite the absence of confirmation, fragments of supposed information began circulating across social platforms. Screenshots, blurry reposts, and second-hand interpretations began shaping a narrative that quickly outgrew its origins. At first, the reaction was limited, isolated comments, brief discussions in online forums, and speculative posts. But within hours, momentum built. Social media algorithms amplified engagement, conversations multiplied, and a rumor that may have started in a narrow space rapidly expanded into a global talking point. As the story spread, a second layer emerged. According to unverified online claims, the alleged DNA-related controversy did not remain confined to the digital space. Instead, it reportedly spilled into real-world interactions, where emotions escalated beyond control. What began, in theory, as a search for clarity allegedly transformed into confrontation. Conversations became charged, questions became accusations, and uncertainty turned into tension. Some accounts suggest voices were raised. Others describe emotional intensity escalating rapidly, creating a situation that may have required intervention from those nearby. However, none of these details have been verified, and no official accounts confirm any of these events. Still, the presence of these narratives shapes public perception, making the situation feel more dramatic than any confirmed fact supports. The aftermath, according to circulating interpretations, was not immediate resolution, but distance. Communication reportedly broke down, messages went unanswered, calls were avoided. Silence, which once represented privacy and emotional control, began to take on a different meaning. It was no longer neutral. It became symbolic, interpreted by observers as separation, uncertainty, or unresolved tension. While these alleged personal developments were unfolding behind closed doors, the public narrative was expanding uncontrollably. Social media users began analyzing every possible detail connected to the individuals involved. Old interviews resurfaced. Past interactions were re-examined. Even unrelated moments were reinterpreted through the lens of the current speculation. A culture of digital investigation took hold, where fans acted as analysts, attempting to reconstruct events from fragments that were often incomplete or unverified. This is where the story becomes more complex, the merging of private reality and public perception. On one side is what may have actually occurred behind closed doors, known only to those directly involved. On the other side is the digital reconstruction of those events, shaped by speculation, emotional interpretation, and viral amplification. These two versions of reality now coexist, overlapping and contradicting each other in ways that make it difficult to distinguish fact from assumption. And in the absence of official clarification, speculation fills every gap. Online discourse has split into multiple directions. Some users treat the rumors as credible, pointing to timing, consistency, and repeated claims as indirect validation. Others dismiss the entire narrative, emphasizing the lack of evidence and warning against drawing conclusions from anonymous sources. A third group remains uncertain, observing without commitment to either side, yet unable to ignore the intensity of the discussion. This uncertainty fuels the story further. According to circulating accounts, the alleged confrontation reportedly began with a simple question, one phrase that would set everything in motion. Is it true? That question, if accurately reported, became the symbolic turning point of the entire narrative. It transformed ambiguity into confrontation, curiosity into emotional tension, and silence into reaction. What followed, according to unverified interpretations, was an emotional escalation. Defensiveness, confusion, disbelief, each response intensifying the situation further. Within a short span of time, what may have begun as a conversation reportedly evolved into a heated exchange that neither side could easily de-escalate. At the center of this alleged conflict sits the DNA test claim. Fragments of supposed screenshots and reposted content began linking the situation to another high-profile figure, Latto. Her name entered the conversation not through direct confirmation or public statement, but through association and online speculation. Once introduced into the narrative, her presence became a focal point of analysis across social platforms. Fans began revisiting past interviews, analyzing lyrics, and dissecting social media interactions for hidden meaning. Even ordinary moments were reinterpreted as clues. A comment, a timing overlap, or a casual mention became material for theory building. However, despite widespread discussion, no verified evidence has established any connection between Latto and the alleged claims. Still, in the logic of social media narratives, perception often outweighs verification. As speculation expanded, additional theories emerged suggesting that the alleged DNA test may not have been the sole source of tension. Some unverified insider claims suggest that underlying issues, long-standing emotional distance, unresolved disagreements, or private frustrations, may have already existed before the rumor surfaced. In that interpretation, the DNA claim did not create conflict, it exposed it. That distinction is important because it reframes the entire narrative. Instead of a single triggering event, the situation becomes a culmination of multiple unresolved tensions, slowly building beneath the surface over time. Meanwhile, public attention continued to intensify. Every new post, every screenshot, every alleged leak added another layer of interpretation. Online communities evolved into real-time analysis hubs, where users debated timelines, motives, and implications. The lack of clarity did not slow the conversation, it accelerated it. Then came another development, the alleged emergence of a more direct confrontation. According to unverified reports, the situation reportedly escalated into a face-to-face interaction in a private setting. No cameras, no public audience, just individuals and emotions at their peak intensity. Accounts describe rising tension, shifting energy, and a rapid escalation from dialogue to confrontation. While some early rumors framed the situation as a misunderstanding, others suggested deeper emotional stakes, trust issues, betrayal, or unresolved suspicion. However, none of these claims are substantiated by official sources. What followed, according to circulating narratives, was fragmentation. Communication reportedly broke down further, distance increased, silence expanded, and the absence of clarity created even more room for speculation. In parallel, the digital environment amplified every fragment of the story. Short clips allegedly connected to the situation began circulating online. Grainy footage, partial audio, cropped screenshots, none fully verifiable, yet all widely discussed. Users slowed footage, zoomed into frames, and attempted to extract meaning from incomplete information. One of the defining characteristics of this situation is precisely that, incompleteness. No single confirmed narrative exists. Instead, there are fragments competing for attention, each interpreted differently depending on perspective, bias, or belief. And that fragmentation keeps the story alive. As speculation continued, new alleged messages surfaced online. One widely shared claim suggested a warning-like statement: "Tell him to stop before it gets worse." No source, no verification, no context, yet its timing aligned with the broader narrative, giving it viral traction. Whether authentic or not, its psychological impact was immediate. It introduced the idea of escalation beyond personal conflict. It implied external awareness, pressure, consequence. Meanwhile, silence from those directly involved deepened the uncertainty. 21 Savage, in particular, has remained publicly silent throughout the unfolding discussion. For some observers, this silence represents strategic restraint. For others, it suggests seriousness or sensitivity surrounding the situation. But regardless of interpretation, the silence itself has become part of the narrative. Because in digital storytelling, absence of information becomes information. As time progressed, New claims suggested that what the public has seen so far may only be fragments of a larger, unreleased narrative. Some online sources allege that additional material exists, uncut footage, full context, or extended information that has not yet been made public. If true, that possibility shifts everything again, because it means the current debate is built on partial understanding. And if more complete information emerges later, it could either confirm existing speculation or completely dismantle it. This uncertainty creates tension that sustains attention. At this point, the story is no longer simply about a DNA rumor, an alleged confrontation, or social media speculation. It has evolved into something broader, a case study in how narratives form in the digital age, how fragments become stories, how silence becomes interpretation, how speculation becomes momentum, and how perception can sometimes outweigh verified truth. Until official clarity is provided, if it ever is, the narrative will continue evolving. Every new post, every alleged leak, every reinterpretation adds movement to a story that has no fixed ending. The public remains suspended between belief and skepticism, between curiosity and caution, between what is known and what is merely assumed. Online users began revisiting past interactions, interviews, and public appearances. What was once ordinary became subject to reinterpretation. A comment, a lyric, a timing coincidence, each became a possible clue in a story that had no confirmed foundation. But the problem is not interpretation itself. It is interpretation without verified input. As speculation expanded, additional claims emerged suggesting that the DNA test may not represent the full picture. Some versions of the rumor argue that even if such a test exists, it may not be accurately represented in public discussion. Others suggest that the narrative surrounding it is incomplete, shaped by missing context or fragmented information. Everything, according to online narratives and rapidly spreading speculation, has shifted into a new phase, one defined not by clarity, but by accumulation. Not a single confirmed moment, but a growing chain of interpretations, fragments, and alleged leaks that together form a story still in motion. In this evolving narrative, nothing feels fully settled. Every new detail changes the shape of what came before it, and every unanswered question becomes fuel for the next wave of discussion. At the center of this unfolding situation remains 21 Savage, an artist known for precision, restraint, and an unusually private public identity. Over the years, he has built an image that avoids unnecessary exposure. He rarely explains personal matters in detail, rarely engages in public disputes, and almost never allows personal conflict to spill into the open. That controlled silence has long been part of his appeal. But in stories like this, silence is never neutral. When information is limited, people do not stop interpreting it, they expand it. Gaps become theories, absence becomes meaning, and in the absence of official confirmation, speculation begins to take the shape of narrative. According to unverified claims circulating online, the current wave of attention began with a rumor involving a leaked DNA test tied to his personal life. There is no verified documentation supporting this claim, no confirmed statement, no official release, only fragments, screenshots, reposted messages, and anonymous posts, each contributing to a growing sense of uncertainty. At first, the reaction was small. Isolated comments, short discussions, casual speculation in forums and comment sections. But as often happens in digital environments, small signals do not remain small for long. They spread, they multiply, they are reinterpreted and reshared until they become something much larger than their origin. Within hours, the narrative expanded far beyond its initial context. What began as a rumor became a structured storyline in the public imagination. And once that structure formed, every new fragment of information was interpreted through it. As attention increased, a second layer of speculation emerged. According to circulating claims, the alleged DNA-related controversy did not remain confined to online discussion. Instead, it reportedly extended into real-world interactions between those involved. These claims suggest that what began as curiosity or confusion escalated into emotionally charged conversations. However, it is important to note that none of these details have been verified by official sources. No confirmed reports support the idea of a documented confrontation. Still, the narrative continues to spread, shaped by repetition and interpretation rather than evidence. In these circulating accounts, the situation allegedly escalated from calm discussion into emotional intensity. Conversations, according to rumor-based narratives, shifted in tone. Questions turned into accusations. Attempts at clarity reportedly gave way to heightened emotions. Some versions suggest voices were raised. Others describe moments of tension, requiring intervention from people nearby. But all of these details remain unverified and exist only within the realm of online storytelling and speculation. What is consistent across all versions, however, is the idea of emotional rupture, the belief that something shifted irreversibly. Online users began revisiting past interactions, interviews, and public appearances. What was once ordinary became subject to reinterpretation. A comment, a lyric, a timing coincidence, each became a possible clue in a story that had no confirmed foundation. But the problem is not interpretation itself. It is interpretation without verified input. As speculation expanded, additional claims emerged suggesting that the DNA test may not represent the full picture. Some versions of the rumor argue that even if such a test exists, it may not be accurately represented in public discussion. Others suggest that the narrative surrounding it is incomplete, shaped by missing context or fragmented information. After this alleged turning point, the narrative suggests that communication broke down. Messages reportedly went unanswered. Calls were avoided. Silence followed, not as comfort but as distance. In public interpretation, this silence became significant. It was no longer seen as privacy. It was interpreted as separation, as tension, as unresolved emotional weight. Meanwhile, the online environment transformed the situation into a constantly evolving discussion. Social media users began reconstructing timelines from fragments. Old interviews were revisited. Past interactions were reanalyzed. Even unrelated moments were reinterpreted through the lens of current speculation. In this way, the story stopped being about confirmed events and became about perception. And perception, once established, is difficult to reverse. Different communities developed different interpretations. Some treated the rumors as credible due to repetition and timing. Others rejected them entirely due to lack of verified evidence. A third group remained uncertain, observing without committing, yet still engaging with the unfolding discussion. This division itself became part of the narrative engine. Because uncertainty does not slow a story like this, it accelerates it. According to circulating accounts, the alleged confrontation reportedly began with a single question: is it true? That question, whether accurately reported or not, has become symbolic within the narrative. It represents the transition from private doubt to public tension, from internal uncertainty to external conflict. From that point onward, interpretations diverge. Online users began revisiting past interactions, interviews, and public appearances. What was once ordinary became subject to reinterpretation. A comment, a lyric, a timing coincidence, each became a possible clue in a story that had no confirmed foundation. But the problem is not interpretation itself. It is interpretation without verified input. As speculation expanded, additional claims emerged suggesting that the DNA test may not represent the full picture. Some versions of the rumor argue that even if such a test exists, it may not be accurately represented in public discussion. Others suggest that the narrative surrounding it is incomplete, shaped by missing context or fragmented information. Some accounts describe confusion and defensive responses. Others suggest emotional escalation. In all versions, the situation becomes increasingly intense within a short span of time. At the center of this speculation is the alleged DNA test itself. Fragments of supposed screenshots and reposted claims began circulating, suggesting a connection involving another artist, Latto. However, no verified evidence confirms any involvement, and no official statements support these claims. Despite this, her name entered the conversation and remained there through association. Once a name becomes part of a viral narrative, it is difficult to remove it, even without confirmation. Online users began revisiting past interactions, interviews, and public appearances. What was once ordinary became subject to reinterpretation. A comment, a lyric, a timing coincidence, each became a possible clue in a story that had no confirmed foundation. But the problem is not interpretation itself. It is interpretation without verified input. As speculation expanded, additional claims emerged suggesting that the DNA test may not represent the full picture. Some versions of the rumor argue that even if such a test exists, it may not be accurately represented in public discussion. Others suggest that the narrative surrounding it is incomplete, shaped by missing context or fragmented information. If true, that means the public is reacting not to the full story, but to partial data. And partial data always creates distortion. This introduces a more complex possibility, that the alleged confrontation was not triggered by a single piece of evidence, but by a buildup of tensions over time. In this interpretation, the DNA rumor, if it exists at all, is not the beginning but the breaking point. A culmination rather than a cause. A final trigger in a sequence of emotional and relational stressors that had been developing quietly behind the scenes. In this framing, the situation becomes less about one moment and more about accumulation. Small doubts over time, unspoken tensions, miscommunications, assumptions, emotional distance, and eventually, a moment where everything converges. Even after the alleged confrontation, the narrative suggests that further private discussions may have occurred. Attempts at clarification, emotional exchanges, efforts to stabilize a situation already under strain. But instead of resolution, these discussions reportedly added further complexity. More questions, more uncertainty, more emotional distance. As private dynamics allegedly became more strained, the public narrative continued expanding. Every new fragment of information, real or alleged, was absorbed into the larger storyline. Social media platforms became amplification systems where speculation traveled faster than clarification. Users built timelines, created theories, and debated possibilities as though reconstructing a puzzle with missing pieces. And in that process, fiction and interpretation often became indistinguishable from fact. At the same time, the narrative surrounding Latto continued to fluctuate. Some claims suggested involvement, others suggested misinterpretation. Still others argued that timing and coincidence had been incorrectly linked into a false pattern. With no official confirmation, all versions remain speculative. This inconsistency only deepens the uncertainty. Because when no single version of a story can be verified, all versions begin to compete equally. As attention intensified, the narrative didn't settle, it expanded. A new layer of speculation began circulating online. The idea that what people had seen so far might not even be close to the full picture. According to anonymous posts and unverified claims shared in private chats and niche forums, there could be additional context still waiting to surface. Messages, interactions, or details that haven't yet reached public view. If that's even remotely true, it changes the nature of the story entirely. Because it would mean the current version of events isn't just incomplete, it's incomplete on purpose, or incomplete by circumstance. And in the digital world, incompleteness doesn't close a story, it opens it wider. Almost immediately, a new alleged message began circulating. It appeared in screenshots passed through group discussions and reposted across platforms. The message hinted that more is coming, suggesting that future details could either support or completely overturn what people currently believe. No source, no verification, no way to confirm where it originated. And yet it had an immediate effect. It shifted the conversation away from conclusions and back into anticipation, away from answers and back into possibility. Because in online culture, anticipation can be more powerful than information itself. The promise of what comes next often carries more weight than what is already known. Meanwhile, the central figures in the narrative have remained publicly silent. That silence has now become part of the story itself. Depending on who is interpreting it, it looks like strategy, restraint, avoidance, or unresolved tension. But silence is never neutral in a viral environment. It doesn't reduce speculation, it multiplies it. Every unanswered question becomes a gap. Every gap becomes space for interpretation. And every interpretation becomes another thread in a growing web of assumptions. Social media, as always, amplifies everything it touches. Clips are slowed down and replayed. Old interviews are resurfaced. Screenshots are zoomed in, analyzed, and reinterpreted. Even unrelated moments from the past are pulled into the discussion once someone draws a connection, accurate or not. This creates a cycle that feeds itself. Interpretation generates attention. Attention generates more interpretation. And over time, the original source becomes less important than the narrative that grows around it. At that point, the story no longer depends on facts to evolve. It begins to evolve on its own. What started as a single rumor now behaves like a living structure, constantly expanding, constantly shifting, shaped as much by audience reaction as by any actual event behind it. And that's what makes situations like this so difficult to pin down. Because at the center of it all, there are still only fragments, alleged claims, circulating screenshots, partial narratives, and unanswered questions. No confirmed report, no official explanation, no verified evidence that can fully stabilize the conversation. Just overlapping uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, meaning gets constructed in real time. The alleged DNA test, the rumored connections, the supposed conversations, the names being attached, all of it exists in the same space, unverified, unconfirmed, and interpreted in multiple conflicting ways. No single version has emerged as definitive. No authority has stepped in to close the gap, and no clear endpoint has been established. So the narrative continues to move forward, not because it is complete, but because it is still open. Every new claim adds pressure. Every silence adds weight. Every interpretation stretches the story further than before. And somewhere within all of it remains a possibility that the final missing piece, if it ever appears, could do one of two things: confirm what people already believe or completely dismantle it. Until then, the situation stays exactly where it is. Unresolved, unverified, unfinished, and still unfolding.